If you were sexually assaulted as a child, then you are shame-based. Don't be frightened. It's not something that can't be overcome, but it's something that you need to understand. And if you understand it, your life will change. You will improve every aspect of your life, every relationship. Your sense of self has been nurtured since you were born. You know, there's the nature-nurture argument, but with C-PTSD, that's nurture. A person, you know, we judge each other by our weirdnesses, our strange behaviors so much. But guess what? A lot of those strange behaviors really are stemming from people who have been so injured that they don't know any other behaviors. So rather than shunning someone who exhibits these signs of C-PTSD and other things, but in my particular case, obviously, I'm going to center it around C-PTSD for CSA survivors specifically. But it does apply to any kind of C-PTSD. And, you know, C-PTSD can come from being, you know, having a wonderful, loving family and just being in a war zone or food deprived or losing parents tragically. More often, you know, what I'm talking about are physically abusive situations, and specifically those of us who were sexually assaulted repeatedly as children. Reminding you again, as I always will, multiple times through this entire broadcast, that you need to call sexual abuse, sexual assault, abuse, assault, abuse, assault. Do you see the difference in the scale of weight? Well, the scales of the justice system does. And when we allow people to say that we were sexually abused, then we diminish our experience, and we diminish the sentences they get, and we diminish the way anybody will or will not take us seriously. I couldn't even get my own family to listen to me say I'm writing a book, despite multiple efforts at trying to bring it up, until I was doing it and got disowned by my own sister, because we don't talk about this stuff. And she didn't know, granted. She was innocent as the day is long, this sister. But still, the blowback comes. The blowback comes because of shame. So back to the top. This is part 2 of shame. And I promised yesterday, after a very lengthy overview, that today we're going to break down to, okay, what is C-PTSD? What is C-PTSD-related shame? How does it manifest? What does it look like? Where does it come from? More importantly, what the hell can we do about it? And we can do a lot of things. We can be fine. It can be fine. You're not going to be like somebody that was never traumatized in their childhood by being raped, you know. But everybody's got their cross to bear. Don't compare crosses. Something I always say, I always preach. Don't compare crosses. Because you never know what you can take until you take more. So, you know, a person that, to me, like, comes to me early on, someone would say to me they were sexually violated, and then they're like, my boss pinched my ass at work and I can't sleep and whatever. And I have to admit, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm a survivor. I have become a neurolinguistic practitioner just recently. But, I mean, my first thought was, shut the fuck up. Shut the hell up. Seriously, you got your ass pinched. Try being groomed and raped for 7 years. But guess what? I was wrong. Don't compare crosses. Because those are the little things that lead to the big picture that allows little girls to be sexualized. And whereas most men can walk on by, and women can walk on by, despite that societal sexualization, it does encourage a rape culture. And it does encourage people to think of children as sexualized, sexually available beings. So we'll get all into that later in Educate and Advocate. You know, if you don't want your daughter to be preyed upon, why are you dressing her like a mini whore? Stuff like that. We'll talk about later in the E in Spades. But back to shame. Shame and guilt. The first thing you need to know about C-PTSD. Shame and guilt present similarly, kinda, but then not at all. Guilt is something that a person who doesn't hate themselves, who just made a bad choice, has. They're like, I did something wrong, and they either feel terrible about it, or if they're full narcissist type, they're like, I didn't get away with it, and I feel terrible that I didn't get away with it. But in any case, their guilt can be fixed in their own mind, as I was saying yesterday. They can fix their guilt. It's not inherent to them and who they are. But with C-PTSD, shame, where it differs from guilt, instead of feeling a normal sense of guilt that a person who didn't have C-PTSD had, we go full shame in every situation. No matter what, we go full shame in every situation. So it doesn't matter how little it was, how big it was, it's our fault. We're sure of it. We think we're a terrible person on the inside. Like I said yesterday, we think we're like just bad, just baddie bad bad, just really bad to the bone bad. So shame and guilt have to be managed a little differently, right? Shame is a core belief. It's what we call a core belief. I actually have an outline for the first time. I actually always write them, but never, ever, ever, ever look at them because I've just got a pool of knowledge up here. A lot of spaghetti. But I did actually want to follow this outline a little bit today. I'm going to talk about core beliefs now, because a core belief, when shame becomes your core belief, that's who you are, not something you did, not something you're guilty of, but who you are, it will affect every aspect of your life, right? So we're going to start with, how did it happen? How did it happen? Well, when you're robbed of your power, when you're robbed of choice, when you are subjected, and I'm going to go sex specific because there's some great people out there. Like I watch everything Anna Runkle, the Crappy Childhood Fairy, puts out, and I recommend you do too. But it's not sexually, it's not about sexual assault related C-PTSD. And one thing you will read, and if you're here, you've probably done the same thing I did, read all kinds of stuff, and every book in the library and online, and it always says about C-PTSD, there's always like a star at the bottom that says, if the nature of the complex trauma, which means repeated trauma, was sexual violation, however they word it, then they're the worst of the worst. This is an especially hard case. These are the really messed up ones. I mean, so you've got that going for you. If you've read the literature, oh, great. Lovely to be in the 5%. And these guys were really fucked up. Really messed up, in case I have to edit that. It is what it is. So fix it. Okay? You can live with constant flashbacks. You can fix it. But shame. That's P. I'm moving on. I'm jumping ahead to next week, separating the past from the present and fixing it in society. That's E. Educate and advocate. But right now we're going to stick with shame. So shame and guilt, what happens when a child is neglected or hurt, physically abused, emotionally abused, put down? How come you can't be as good as your sister, even in nice families that you're just not ever good enough? These C-PTSD develops to where you just feel like, these people typically keep their eyes lowered. They won't look anybody in the eye almost ever. I could look people in the eye if I was selling them something. I, in my life, worked in hotel and worked in marketing and worked in various things. But just talking to, if I'm not preaching at someone, I have a hard time looking someone in the eyes because I don't want to connect on that emotional level. I didn't want to. Now I do. And that's changed life and made it a lot better. It really has. But, so you will see different types of people develop from their CPT experience. Okay. In some situations, depending on the child and depending on the experience. Some people are going to go the route of the comedian. They're going to be funny. They're going to just make everybody laugh. They're going to be likable. And they're never, ever going to tell you that they want to cut their goddamn wrists every day. You know, these are the people that are crying inside, that have stuff going on, but they're not willing. They have been trained one way or the other in their family. That doesn't mean the abuse happened within the family, even. Like mine didn't. I mean, kind of, but not blood family. They've been trained. So the comedian, keep them laughing, right? And another type of person that develops out of a C-PTSD environment is the perfectionist. You know, the perfectionist. I have to do everything right. I have to exceed at everything. I can't do anything wrong. That was me. You know, I just excelled at I'm not trying to be a boastful braggart. It was actually pretty sick, you know, but I was first seat flautist. I was tumbling team. I was cheerleader. I was honor society. I won awards in German. I won awards in speech team. My art teacher wanted me to go on to art school. I mean, it's just like I dominated, but not because I'm just a dominating person so much, although I think there's probably a little of that in me. I am a preacher's daughter after all. For me, it was about, I didn't think there was any other way, because I was so busy trying to make up for the shame that I felt and that I carried, but I didn't identify it. I didn't sit there as a freaking 12-year-old going, I'm going to compensate for shame in these ways. You know, it just happens that way. So that's another kind of person, the perfectionist. We've got the comedian, we've got the perfectionist, we've got the people who go dark. These people are at risk of suicide, and these people are at risk of harming others or continuing the cycle of abuse or assault, or neglect or whatever it is. The people who go no needs, no feelings, no emotions. You can't talk to them. They don't talk to you. They don't talk to their parents. They don't talk to their teachers. They don't fucking care. I did it again. Edit. They don't freaking care. So, those people I feel really sad for, because it's hard to reach somebody that feels so dark and empty inside. And, you know, I felt very dark and empty inside too. I mean, I always knew that I was capable of so much more, but I always knew that I was dirty and dark and wrong. And that's why my own book starts. Okay, this is the take a moment part. I always tell you, if you need a moment, take a moment. I'm beating away my PTSD with every trick in the book that I have learned and that I'm going to teach you right now, because I could go full freak out at the moment, but I'm not going to do that thing, because I choose not to. Sometimes I lose and go full freak out, but mostly I win now. Yay me. I'm not a doctor or therapist. I'm just a fellow survivor, and mostly I win. So I'm going to teach you how to do that thing. But so I tangent it off because I went into my own experience moment there. But it's the deep, dark feeling that there's just, you're not as good as anybody. You know, everything I did to try to excel in this world and at work and in relationships and at sex and all, you know, it was all performance art. It was all just trying to make up for being filthy scum. So I named my book Self-Talk, subtitle, My Continuing Efforts to Survive Childhood Sexual Grooming and Assault. But self-talk, and if you go, the book excerpts are actually attached in the description. It'll take you to my website, which is also sweetsurvivor.com, which is also sweetshoppinggroup.com, which is also the link to this workshop.com, and it's also going to be a link to a group discussion shortly. And the Those Nasty Women podcast starts the week after next, but I had to get these workshops together, and when you go to podcast, you have to load them all at once, turns out. But I won't bore you with all of that. You just don't want to give them one, and then they're looking and they're like, what? There's nothing except for, I've got over 100 in video. I'm on YouTube, but I don't want to go there. I want to start fresh with this workshop. So back to my other device. So intermasking. Seems like I missed a personality type that I was going to throw in, but you know, if I move on, it'll come to me and I'll go, oh, and throw it back in there. But, so neglect, trauma, abuse, assault, poverty, these things are horrible. But sexual violation causes a complete physical shutdown. Like, I just figured out the disconnect. I've been working on this. I made graphs. I made charts. I talked to my counselor. I talked to my therapist. I read everybody else's thing, and I came up with my own charts in my book. That's the love, sex, and intimacy. Damn it, there's a word. Dang it, there's a word for the word, the middle where it all crosses over. I know this word. It escapes me. So we are taught by society and our parents, you know, even in a good situation, that love involves intimacy, and sex is intimate. If you're being intimate, that's sexual, and that sex, then you would think, conversely, would involve intimacy and love, and instead, sex can just stand on its own. You can just be being used. You can be being violated. You can be in it as a performance artist because, like me, you didn't know that you could have sexual feelings outside of, you know, sex is expected. And it's not like horrible, but, you know, the idea of having orgasms and all with a human being, that is not a thing to most C-PTSD survivors unless they work on it. So we will. Because, full disclosure, I discovered just under 3 years ago, the first time that I had that awakening where I wanted someone physically instead of being with them physically because I thought we were a good match intellectually. You know, I went for life fit because I didn't know. So that may seem cold, right? But it's not. And here's why. And we're going to tie this into shame, because I'm going to tie this into what from the outside looks like slutty behavior, although I hate terms like that. Like I said yesterday, I don't believe in terms like that. Promiscuous behavior, whatever. If you're sexually violated as a child, then you have a body. You feel physical sensations with no context that makes any sense. So now you know, I mean, now I know that those feelings are good, but at the time they were immediately associated with guilt and shame, and it was just overwhelming. So I just figured this out, you know. It was almost 3 years ago that I had the orgasmic awakening with another human instead of a toy or myself before. And I've been married and divorced 3 times, and I haven't lacked for boyfriends. I'm just saying, goddamn, when you find that level, I became a preacher, literally. Like, you should have an intimate bond, whether it's sex or just any kind of emotional that includes touch in some way with the person, with your partner. Otherwise, it's a construct. We're going to talk all about marriage and the bullshit construct that marriage is, and why you need to get a life if you're living off of somebody else and making excuses for it. That's on Those Nasty Women Talk podcast the week after next. But sticking with an actual, more intellectual approach here, and part 2 is shame. I want to make sure I don't miss anything here. We naturally, when you're interested in someone, right, and you feel a physical sensation that says, I maybe want to sleep with this person, to a C-PTSD sufferer someone with the condition, dang, I did it again, I don't like the word suffer, but to one of us, that sensation of pleasure is immediately just shut down by memories of guilt and shame and wrong and bad, to the point that we dissociated. And we're going to talk very deeply about the neuroscience of dissociation next week. Because next week is about separating the past from the present. That's the P in spades. We will always talk about separating the past from the present. We will talk about every letter every day because they intertwine. You know, I didn't just like make some shit up. I just figured out this is what I do every day. You know, and I was writing my book. I didn't plan to make the spades method. It just arose out of writing my book and organizing my book. I was like, hey, if I throw in an acronym on here, I could tell people this stuff and maybe save them 20 or 30 years of kicking their own ass, because education and understanding goes a long way to not feeling like a piece of shit. You know, like I said at the top, you belong to a club no one wanted to be in. Sorry about that, but you do. So do I. A lot of people do. I saw a woman on Oprah that watched 14 family members be macheted to death, and she only survived because she was rapeable. I'm saying don't compare crosses, but definitely carry yours and burn the bitch. Burn the bitch. You don't need your cross anymore. So, how do you get there from here? Especially if you're not fortunate enough to have a loving, emotionally intelligent partner who has sexual interest in you, you know, especially then. Well, it took me 14 years of being alone. And I certainly haven't lacked for date requests, you know, but 14 years of by choice alone, raising my children. And then I started writing this book. It was an accident too. I had a blackout and I just wrote 7 chapters before I woke up again. And we're going to talk about that too. That's actually on the shame list. One of the signs of C-PTSD of a victim or a former victim who hopefully is now a survivor of childhood sexual assault related C-PTSD is hiding, is like I would go in the bathtub and shut the curtain. I would go in the closet. I would go outside. I have found myself on the church doorstep of a church I didn't know in Atlanta, where I don't live, in the past. Not even in the state. I mean, yeah, I was there for something, but just, yeah, you fly, you dissociate. So as I was saying, we'll talk more about that next Wednesday and Thursday. But suffice it to say that if somebody appears to be dissociating, that's a sign. That's a sign. And it's something that is neurological. It's not a choice, and you can't drug it away. And that's something we're going to talk about deeply too. The medicine that they give for PTSD is absolutely inappropriate for CPTSD. I am not a doctor. I am not a licensed, well, actually, I'm an NLP now, but not a doctor or a psychiatrist, medical doctor. If you take medicine, never stop without talking to your doctor and working out a plan and seeing how it works. You can't just stop taking something. Don't do that. I'm just suggesting that studies show, I'm just sharing that studies show that there is a huge overuse and inappropriate use of antidepressants with people who really just need to reprocess memories that were never ever processed in the first place. Hence the CPTSD, how it comes on. You know, people will say, stop freaking out. What you need to understand about those of us with PTSD and CPTSD is we don't think about that. We're not going, oh, I'm going to have a PTSD or CPTSD event right now and then do it. It's not a plan. It's like another reel of life that just something triggers you and it's playing at the same time as what is now. And you have to find the moment where you recognize it. But at the time you're going to find it and recognize it, it's already happening. So you've got a very small moment. And if you're a partner or a loved one or a medical personnel, you've got a very fine line that you can look for. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to teach you how to find that line, to not jump down the rabbit hole of crazy, because we love the rabbit hole of crazy. Crazy is probably rude. The rabbit hole of confused. When you go whacked out, when you go full drinking, drugging, when you go full yelling, screaming, running away, hiding, crying, these things fill up all the space where the jumbled up memories are hurting you at that very moment. So it's a way of substituting what is the hurtful PTSD memories and experience. If you substitute it with, anything from over drinking to over exercising to over sexing to whatever you do, that is obviously excessive. So don't do that thing. We're going to learn that self-sabotaging is natural and ineffective, and it's not going to get you where you want to go. It's not going to get you from here to there. I literally have had to let go of coaching clients. I'm free. I'm free. But you can subscribe at Sweet Survivor, please. Goddamn do. I need $5 subscribers really badly because I don't want to have to start selling things. I mean, I have a shopping group, but I sell women, family, and community artisans products, and I've been online with that since 2017. The same store, just morphed names a couple times because my partner died of COVID and his wife too. And so I rolled the name, went on my own, put everything into Sweet now, Sweet Survivor. So you can do that thing. But what you need to do for yourself, and I'm going to kind of wrap up shame with where a lot of people start. You start with, you need to forgive yourself. And I'm here to tell you, no, you do not. You don't need to forgive yourself. That sets you up to feel like there's something within you that needs forgiven. And there's not. Nothing that can be done to you, even if you didn't fight back. I didn't fight back. I didn't yell. I didn't tell anybody. I let it go on for years. And I hesitate to even use the word let, because that is demeaning to myself. The nature of grooming, which is what my book is about, lends you to just dissociate. You learn that the way out is through, as I said earlier. Hence, what can appear to be promiscuity is really, I tried to stay away from people, but if they got me trapped and wanted to have sex, the way out was through. Early on, I learned how to not do that thing quickly, but there were a handful of years between the time when I got away from my assailant and the time I found some self-respect and faced up to the fact that this was a thing, where I just didn't understand. So we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to just take a peek once again at my handy dandy iPad. Like, what are you doing? I think I've pretty much talked about everything that I really need to talk about today. Yes, sir. Yes, sirs and ma'ams. And anything in between. I love everybody. I work with everybody. Don't care what you are. I just want it to be authentic. And I don't care what you do. I just want it to be in your best interest and those of others. Okay? I'm going to be putting out shorts and things because my publisher says I need to do that thing now. My goal in life is to be leading, spreading, teaching people to lead SPADES workshops. And I'm writing right now a preventative, child-friendly, curse-free version of basically a self-respect book. Oh, and also, besides Sweet Survivor, $5 subscription, like and subscribe. I never tell anyone to do that, but it really matters. I need you to like and subscribe. Even if you walk away and never come back, please do that thing, because you know, the algorithm, you've got to get to a certain number, and then they put it in front of more people, and then we can help more people. We are entirely nonprofit. I can tell you, we are entirely nonprofit. That is for sure. And we could stand a little more nonprofit funding for sure. So please start your $5 monthly subscription at the Self Portal, where you can start, cancel, skip, pause yourself at any time at sweetsurvivor.com. Also, I sell collections. Sweet Shopping Group is the morphing of my store, seasonalfair.com, which morphed into feelgoodfairtrade.com for a handful of years during the pandemic, which after my partner died, which morphed into the sweetshoppinggroup.com, because now everything I do is to try to make the world a better place for CSA survivors and for those to come and everybody else. So, more next week, Wednesday, and I'll talk to you then. Survivor. I always look really weird when I do this because I have to end 2 streams and they don't end at the same time. Yes, I'm sure I want to end. Yeah.